Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help prospective law students save $300,000 on law school. To receive 3 money-saving strategies today, visit legallearningcenter.com/money. Today's guest is Gabriele. Gabriele attended a 2-year program in law school. She's going to share with us all the pros and cons. So let's check in with Gabriele.
Well, hello, I'm Gabriele Faulkner. I am a somewhat new grad, although feel like I've been out for a while. I graduated in December 2019. December, you ask? I did a 2-year program. That's me. I graduated from New York Law School 2-year honors program. I said it. So now I work as an IP attorney for a virtual firm, 100% remote, and I absolutely love what I do. Trademarks and copyright is my jam.
Awesome. Okay, so yes, we are here today to discuss 2-year programs and in particular your experience and thoughts on a 2-year program, because it is a very unique kind of way to do law school, and it is something available out there nationwide. I'm sure they're all just a little bit different, but to give our listeners a little bit of an idea, why don't you go ahead and give us a general layout of how a 2-year program works?
Yeah. So from my perspective, from my 2-year law school program, we had the same kind of entry process. You did have to apply to the 2-year program, but I do know some people that applied to the normal 3-year program and were tapped and they were like, you seem like you would do really well in this accelerated program, so why don't you come join? When that happened, it was kind of very fast. Like, I think I was told that I was accepted in, I don't know, December. And then the program started in January 18th. And so it was a very fast transition. For me, I was already working as a paralegal, so it was a little easy just to be able to be like, okay, like, this drill, I have to go to law school now. It was really fun, I will say, doing a 2-year program. And I think there's benefits and detriments depending on your personality. For me, I am the kind of person who wants to be going and not have any breaks, because if I have a break, I get super lazy. So the 2-year program was like great in that aspect. I will say there obviously, were some things that would be fixed. So I'll start with just like the general, outlay is we started in January and we, had a semester, like a normal, winter to spring semester. And then we had a summer semester and then we had a fall semester. So just, 24 consecutive straight months. We had, 1 week in between our spring and summer semester and 3 weeks in between our summer and fall semester. So, we did have breaks. It's not like we were going all the time, but it was definitely, we had to, say that we couldn't work, which, like, for our first semester, which for people who were doing this 2-year program, which they advertised, my school did at least, to a lot of people that were already in a career and they wanted a second career and they wanted to be an attorney. And so that's kind of like who this program was advertised to. I will say the makeup of our program was not that. We had a few, people who this was their second career, but the majority of the people in there were, kids who had just graduated from college. I was a paralegal, but I didn't consider that as a, career at that point. That was just a transition to go into law school. So I was kind of like in the middle, right? Like, I wasn't just graduated, but I didn't have like a whole career behind me. So, that was the layout. It was, we had a little bit more credits than all that we were taking during the semester than the normal 3-year program students. So, we had that first week of January, we did kind of like an orientation, although that orientation was a class that we got credits for. It was an intro into legal reasoning class. Very fun, although that class, because it was truncated into 1 week, the days were like from 8 o'clock to 5 p.m. And so, that was our first class. And then it was super intense, but it got us ready. And then the next week, the normal school started and we started our actual like real semester then. We didn't have a lot of interaction with normal, 3-year students. That was, there was like 16 of us when the program started. We only graduated 7. So you can tell there how difficult it was to stay in the program. But we had miniature classrooms. We were pretty much, kept to ourselves. For our first semester. We did get to like break out once, we had our first semester. And our first semester was, the introductory classes. It was criminal law, it was torts, it was a lot, civil practice, civil procedure. So, a lot of those classes. And then the next semester, we again had, a lot of the first year classes, although we were able to, if we want to take a few extra credits. And that's like going back to what I was talking about with the credits. I remember sitting finally, like the first time I branched out into meeting 3-year students was when my first week of orientation for law review. And that's also something I can talk about because law review for the 2-year program was also something that was very interesting. And I remember a student sitting in the classroom being like, how are we supposed to write a case comment when we already have an 11 credit load? And I was sitting over here thinking, I have a 16 credit load. Like I'm supposed to do a case comment. And so, there obviously were differences, but like I said, I liked that, fast paced kind of thing. I felt like, I got better grades because all I did for 2 years was law. I didn't do anything else. So, it was fun and I would do it again for sure. Getting to some caveats, for example, journals and clinics. Like I really wanted to be in a clinic. That was something that somebody said to me was necessary in law school. It helps you like actually have a legal education, not just theory, but also practice. And so I really wanted to do it. And I was interested in intellectual property at the time, but I was also interested in trial and mediation and stuff like that. And so I applied for the mediation clinic, and I'm very happy to say I got in, but boy, was it a struggle because when I applied, I was accepted. And then I was told by the administration that the 2-year honors program could not participate in clinics because New York City requires that you have 30 credits before you can enter a clinic. And the 2-year program by my third semester was only going to have 28 credits. And so there was a little bit of struggle there. We actually did my school stuck up for us 2-year program students, and they went to, the Court of Appeals in New York City, and they said, this rule is here, but we need to fight it for this one specific instance. And they were successful. We were able to join clinics, which was something super exciting for me. I wanted that, practice in real life. The next thing that was super interesting was getting onto the law review. So for people who graded on, it was very much, there were a few considerations, right? So our program was considered an honors program. And the reason is because we got what was considered the hard professors, right? And so the professors that graded hard. We also had a different curve than the rest of the normal 3-year program. So we were a very, and you had to keep a specific GPA to stay in the 2-year program. And so if you didn't have a 3.0 by the end of your second semester, you had to decelerate and you had to join the 3-year program. And so, it was very weird, how were we going to be compared to grade on to the law review with people who had a different curve than us and had different professors than us and all of the above. Now, it worked out that me, my best friend, and 2 other students were able to grade on to the law review, which was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was also another thing that I was told, this is what you have to do in law school. Now, you're talking to attorney Gabby, and this is like, I would have different advice, but this is the advice that I had gone into law school with. So needed a clinic and needed a journal. Graded on, but we didn't find out that we had graded on because our summer semester was our second semester. And so, we hadn't had those grades until the summer semester was over, which meant that when students normally find out that they grade on to law review in August, or in July, we didn't find out until, the end of August, the beginning of September that we graded on. And there was already deadlines for the case comment research to begin. And we were just like, oh my God, the 3-year program students have already met these deadlines of this case comment, and we haven't even been given the instructions yet. So there was obviously some kinks to work out there. I was very vocal with my school about my perspective. So,
Nice.
there's lots of different things that have consideration when you're going into a 2-year program for sure.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. Yeah, you said so much that I'm like, I have a million questions for you.
Ask away.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning. I'll start with the admissions part. So, were there was there a higher standard, or what was the difference between people who did want to go into the 2-year program versus the normal 3-year program?
This is what I know from my experience, but also from the experience that I've spoken to with other 2-year students. You could apply for the 2-year program, and in fact, many people did. However, like I said, one or two were tapped from the 3-year program. And I also know that even though people were tapped from the 3-year program, that a few people were put on the wait list for the 2-year program, which to me seemed a little interesting. Why would you be going to the 3-year program to tap students if you have people that are waiting to get onto this list? I think what the standard was is that, if you had a higher than average for what my school's, LSAT and GPA was, that if you were, applied to the 3-year program, you could be tapped for the 2-year program. And other than that, like I do think that the people who got on the waiting list for the 2-year program were on the lower scale of the GPA and the LSAT, grading system. So definitely, it was, they called it the 2-year honors program. It was something that you were supposed to have a little bit higher of a GPA, and you were supposed to, you couldn't go below a 3.0 in law school. You can't go below, I think, like a 2.7. And if you do, you go on probation. And then if you go below a 2, you get like essentially kicked out. So it was just a little harder standard for the 2-year program. Instead of being a 2.0, you had to have a 3.0, which is, in law school, that's a very like common GPA to have like a 2.9, a 3.0, to be like right on that line. So I actually know a few kids who were in the 2-year program who eventually, appealed the decision for them to be decelerated, and they were successful. So they were able to stay in the program, which was great.
Were you less qualified or more qualified for scholarships then?
So, super interesting with our program, with the 2-year program, was that no matter what, if you were a part of the program, you got a third, I believe, of your tuition paid for. So essentially, they quoted you, what a normal 3-year education program would be. And they said, if you're going to be in the 2-year program, you don't have to pay a third of that. And then, also just within the hierarchy of, grades and whatnot, you were still eligible for additional scholarship. So there were people in the 2-year program that got a full ride, and there were people in this 2-year program who got their 1/3 scholarship, and that's it, And to me, the 1/3 kind of felt a little ridiculous, because we were spending, yes, we were spending a third of a less time in school, and that makes sense. But we still technically had 6 semesters and all of this stuff, but it was at such an accelerated rate that it just felt like we were paying for time for a full 3rd year rather than 2, 1-month semesters. And so it felt like it should have been a little bit less money than the norm, than what they charged. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, no, that's good to know, because yeah, my understanding is that they charge in a way where you're dollar for dollar. It's not necessarily a cost savings. Scholarships make things maybe a little bit different, but actual dollar for dollar, there is no a savings. They kind of change the way they charge or something like that when I was investigating this. So it's
Yes.
like,
And that is
okay.
how, that was my experience too. The charging was changed, and it was weird, and it was kind of, hard to navigate what I felt like I should be paying for such a program, because maybe I thought I should be paying something different than a normal 3-year program. So
Yeah, especially if it's harder to actually participate in clubs and other things, activities.
yeah. And that's something that I didn't even mention when I was going through my long diatribe, right? Like, I'm an intellectual property attorney, and going into it, I knew going into law school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I remember going to the, in my school, we had centers. So there was like a law and technology center. And I remember I went to the advisor for the center, and I was like, I want to be admitted now. And he was like, okay, well, you can't, you have to be, you have to have a full year under your belt to be able to join the center. And I was like, well, listen, I'm not going to have that, because I technically could, but I wouldn't, be able to really benefit from any of the any of like the lunches and all that stuff if I can't join now? And, I made my case. I'm not a lazy one. I'm not going to go be told no and then, actually listen to that. I made my case and I was able to be accepted into the program like 2 weeks later, which was absolutely wonderful for me. And, it really made, first of all, it made my connection with the advisor a lot stronger, which when you're in the 2-year program and you don't necessarily, have, guests. I mean, you have guest lecturers and everything, but you don't get to really interact with all of the professors in school. It was definitely good for me. Like I found a group of people, and then I was actually able to interact with the 3-year students, which that always makes law school a good experience. For example, I didn't have any other people in my 2-year program who were interested in trademarks, so it was nice to be able to branch out in that aspect. But the 2-year program was a limit on that at first, and then I was able to get around that. So at least you're able to get around things sometimes when the rules don't work in your favor, but you do have to fight for it for sure in a 2-year program.
Wow. Okay, that's really good to know. Before people sign up for programs, they know so little. Law schools keep so much of that information hidden.
They do.
Now, what was the vibe? I'm sure every school is different, but was it very collegial or adversarial inside your section?
Um, Definitely adversarial. I will say we had communication with the 2-year program from before us. So the group that was just 1 year before us, and they had a lot of conflict in that class, and they told us about it. And I think us, the 16 of us, really like met together, and we were like, we don't want to feel this way. But I mean, I was the one who was raising my hand constantly in class. And, even when people were getting cold called, and I would be like, they don't know the answer. Like, I know it, And so, I think I think for me, it was, let me support them. But for, I think other people, like, I know that there was somebody who was super catty that was like, this lady just raised her hand when I was cold called, and was like, I didn't do it, in a negative way. I was just trying to help. And so obviously in law school, that's always going to be the case, right? You have overachievers and you have people who are just there to learn and they don't really know much. And like I said, I had just spent a year and a half as a paralegal learning the ins and outs about torts and litigation and everything like that. And so I had a base knowledge. I knew some of the cases that our torts professors would throw at us. And so, I mean, it was adversarial, but we also understood that it was the 16 of us against the rest of the school. And that was definitely something I appreciated. I still talk to every single one of the first year of the member, like the first year class. Now, I said we graduated 7, so I still talk to, the people who didn't even eventually graduate from the program. Because that first year, that first semester where you're really, shepherded into a little mini group, it makes you there are 2 outcomes. You're either going to be super adversarial or you're going to be super close. And I was lucky enough that we had a good group of people who we all decided together, like, even if we are fighting each other for better grades, we're still going to like be civil on the human front. But other than that, the program, it was professional, but there was obviously like differences than the normal like standard 3-year program where you have such like set and ingrained rules about how to do these kinds of things. So there was definitely, and maybe it was a good and a bad thing, you had some leeway to try and get around these rules, but like rules were created to essentially not hinder, but make it harder to be a 2-year student for sure. So
Now, were you guys able to intern? Because that sounds really difficult.
So that is my biggest gripe with the 2-year program. So one thing that I wasn't really able to do, first of all, was sit for OCIs. I did not have my second semester grades by the time OCIs rolled around. And so that was really hard. I do remember one firm was willing to give me a chance just based on my first semester grades, which was really great. I didn't want to go with that firm just for my own personal reasons. And so maybe I messed it up, but really, we weren't really given the opportunity to join OCI. And so a lot of the work that we did for internships was ourselves. And it was also, you have to remember, I mean, most people do internships during the summer. And we were told if you're going to be, going to school for a full day, you're not really allowed to work at night. I definitely got around that. My first semester, I was doing class from, 9 to 4, and then I would go and I would work at the firm from 4:30 to 8, and so that was my day. And then when did I do homework? Well, I did it when I got home. And so I was lucky in that, right? But if you think about it, that first 2 semesters, so the spring semester and the summer semester, nobody in my 16 group of people was working in the law. And that's that first summer is so important. You get your first internship. It's so important. I mean, like one of my best friends from law school who went to the 3-year program, she got to work with a judge. I'm like, that is just, like that's when you get to explore, right? Because your second summer, you have to be serious. You have to start thinking about where you want to go after school. But that first summer is so exploratory, and the 2-year program, they didn't get that. It was definitely difficult. And if you wanted to make it work, you had to make it work for yourself. Nobody was really helping you make that work. So you had to, I know a lot of people who didn't have their first internship until they decelerated, unfortunately, which is then you're in your 3rd year looking for your first internship. So, it's definitely good and bad.
Yeah. So we had a 2-year program at my school, and that's how I felt. I felt like they were completely isolated. I felt like I couldn't tell, but I was super active. So I never saw them around. So I was like, I don't think they're active. I don't think they do anything, but I just felt like they were just studying, which I mean is legitimate, but and I'm sure there are plenty of firms that look at that as, okay, they were smart enough and hardworking enough to do the 2-year program and give them some credit on that. And again, if they have some work experience, that probably gives them their resume a bit of a boost as well. But yeah, it seemed like there was some stuff missing. And one of the things that they say is so important about law school is networking. And you're not
Yeah.
really networking if you're not getting out there.
And it's not only networking with internships, and like it's not only networking with people that you want to be in the future, it's also networking with your classmates, because they are the people who are going to be your referrals in the future. And I remember, I mean, I'm lucky to be very social, but I remember breaking out. So we had our first 2 semesters where we really didn't get to do any what are they called? Like whatever we wanted to take classes, right? So mine was intellectual
Electives.
property. Electives. Thank you. I forgot that word. I remember walking into my first elective class and being very social. And so, introducing myself to all these people. And then that class finished, that was copyright. And then during that class, I became very close friends with she became the president of our MEFLA, so Media, Entertainment, Arts Law Society, Law Association. And I remember we became friends during that class, and then we did an internship together a little later on. And in the internship, she became very open with me. And she was like, it was so weird to have these new people come into our classes, essentially like what we felt like ruining our curve, because they were because they were maybe a little bit, more intelligent, and have to, be friendly with them. Like we had negative connotations towards you guys when we first met you, and you happened to be very kind, and I like that. And so we became friendly, but like the majority of the people in the 3-year program did not like us 2-year students. They did not, we were not a part of their section, so they didn't know us, and they were being judged against us. But and so there was like a lot of animosity just between the 2-year and the 3-year programs, which was like not necessarily great, because these are supposed to be the people that you rely on for, connections and referrals and networking in the future. So that was definite. I mean, I thank my parents every day for me being a social butterfly, because if not, I wouldn't necessarily have as many legal connections in the field that I do today. So it's really important for sure to, if you're going to be in a 2-year program, make sure you branch out, make sure you talk to everybody in the school, professors that you're never going to interact with, and kids that maybe you see just on the sidelines or something like that. So it's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember them taking any classes with us. I mean, I was at a big school, so I don't know. Maybe they, in some electives were there and I just didn't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's and although I don't think I would necessarily feel that way, but I'm also just kind of like, I just don't care about what other people are doing. So,
That's a lucky kind. I mean, law school is, for any kid listening out there, law school is competitive and cutthroat. And I mean, I don't like to be that way, but a lot of people are that way. So be careful.
yeah, my school cut out a third of the first year class. So we were super competitive.
Wow.
And like I said, so you had that little bit of fear and so forth of who's going to beat you out. But at the same time, yeah, I think I just kind of tuned it all out.
Yeah. Just survive. You got to do what you have to
Take care of
survive.
me. Yeah, do what
Yeah.
I can. Don't worry about anybody else. And things will happen as they're meant to happen. And so, yeah, that whole vibe of like, I don't like you because you're from this accelerated program, it just seems so silly to me, but I get it. I do get it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, any overall, just as a kind of a wrap up, advice you have for someone who's debating between a 2 and 3 year program that maybe we haven't covered yet?
So I think, and I may have covered it a little bit, but I think my biggest piece of advice for somebody who wants to do a 2-year program is like, don't let, talk to the school and really, don't let them turn you away when you're asking these questions, because you are paying their, you're paying their salary. So they should be telling you exactly what this program will be like. You want to ask questions like, will I be hindered when it comes to, like, extracurricular activities? Will I be able to join a clinic? Will I be able to join a journal? Will I have any, hardship in trying to do these things? Make them address those questions before you actually sign up, because a lot of the time schools, rules are constantly changing within, the ABA and with how, law schools are conducted and everything like that. So you want to make sure these law schools have definitely, thought through these programs, because a 2-year program is now the new thing, right? And a lot of schools are not doing their due diligence before they start these programs. And it's super important that you figure out if the school that you want to go to, if they know their stuff. You want to, make sure that you'll be able, make sure that, they have maybe like a mixer between you and the 3-year students, or something that's, social. So, the class that you're going to graduate with. So you want to, be in a program that's going to set you up for success with not only, within the educational field, so having great, professors teaching you, but you also want to be, making sure your, law school is one phase. You want to be setting yourself up for success for your future. So, do those things that, lawyers find important. I mean, maybe be on a journal. I think these days that's not necessarily the number one thing unless you're trying to go to, one of the top firms. But, clinics are very fun. You want to make sure that you have, you have interactions with other students. So just make sure the school is up to snuff on their, on their 2-year program, and they know everything that needs to happen for a 2-year program to succeed. That is my biggest piece of advice.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. If people wanted to reach out to you, if they had questions about this, where can they find you?
Best place to find me is my email. You can reach me at my first name, but I'll spell it because I'm a little unique and I don't spell it right. It's Gabriele, but it's Gabriele at mavenip.com. So that's where you can reach me, and I would welcome any questions. So reach out if you need.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your advice and your time today.
Thank you. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you have to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1% to 2% lower interest rates than the federal government, and with no origination fees and cash back as well. Visit advisor.legallearningcenter.com/Juno for more information. My top takeaways from this chat with Gabriele. Number 1, the 2-year program doesn't necessarily save you money. It might, but overall, it's really just meant to get you out of law school faster. Number 2, as a participant of this type of program, you are going to have less opportunity to intern, network, and participate in clubs and organizations. So just keep that in mind. Number 3. In Gabrielle's program, she was taking more units per semester than the average law student. She had a tougher curve and tougher professors. So all of these are just some things to keep in mind and to ask your school about if you're interested in a 2-year program. That's it for this episode. All the links and so forth will be in the show notes. A full transcript will be available at legallearningscenter.com/Gabriele. And if you like this episode, if you learned something today, please be sure to leave a review that helps us reach more ears and will help more students. Thanks.